Empty shelves. That's one thing that no government ever wants to see. For ordinary shoppers, empty shelves is always a reason to panic. For the government, it says a lot. It says that there's something definitely wrong with the economy. And this is what's been going down over the past few weeks. We've seen a lot of shops stocking fewer and fewer goods, and everyone is looking to the government for a solution on this. Now, over the past week, the government made a major decision. They said imports will no longer be restricted. They're saying, if you have the money, feel free to go out and buy anything outside the country that you want and bring it in here. The government says this is only for a while, just to make sure that our shops don't go empty. To understand why this is a big decision, let's go back a few years a bit. Now in 2009, a lot of things changed in the economy. We started using US dollars. We also opened up our economy. Foreign products flooded our supermarkets. We all celebrated this at the time. Before that, our supermarkets were empty, so we were also excited to see the shops full of goods again. But this was actually a problem. Because we were buying so many foreign goods, there was nobody buying our local stuff. Remember, our industries were still trying to recover, but now they had to compete with cheaper foreign goods. So they went to the government and said, look, protect us. Give us time to get back on our feet. Once we're back up, you can open up the doors again. So the government said, okay, we'll give you what you need. Now this was in 2016, so we started limiting imports. Now 2 years later, things have changed. Empty shelves make the government look bad, so they decided to open up the borders for imports. Now what does this mean? What's going to happen now? What are the pros and cons of this? Let's take a look. First, for the shoppers like you and me, this is great. It's really hard to get that cooking oil that we all use so much. Some imports are cheaper too. Second, competition is good. Maybe this will force our industries to step up their game. They must compete. Zimbabwe is also part of a number of trade agreements. A lot of our trade partners were never happy with these restrictions. Some threatened to retaliate. But that's the positive side of this. There's also the bad side. Remember why we stopped imports in the first place? It was to save our industries. But now that imports are coming in, what's going to happen to our industries? Well, to answer this, let's take a look at what happened when we limited the imports. There's this thing called capacity utilization. That's just looking at how much of your factory you're using. For example, if you have a bakery and it has 100 ovens, how many of those ovens are you actually using? It basically tells us how well your company's doing. So in 2012, capacity utilization was just 44%. In 2013, it fell down to 39%. It kept falling and falling. But this is when industries went to government for help. And then we started limiting imports. What happened next? Capacity utilization went up to 44.7% in 2016. It's been going up since. This year, industries were expecting capacity utilization to go up by 6%. A lot of companies started investing in Zimbabwe again after 2016. Let's give you just a couple of examples. Just this year, we saw ED opening a new production line for Cremora at Nestle. The company said it was possible to do this because of the import restrictions. They had managed to double capacity utilization to 75%. They invested millions. Let's take a look at another company, Cairns. We saw some products that had disappeared coming back onto the market. Sunjam, Chomkin chips, Spuds. So a lot of our companies were still trying to find their feet again. It's going to get a lot harder now. And there's one big question that we all have here. The government says that you can buy Forex anywhere you want and buy goods outside the country, but they have to sell these goods for bond notes. How does this work? Even a government minister has been selling his imported beer in US dollars. We wait to see how this all goes down. Now look, yes, we know nobody wants to see empty shelves. It makes us all look bad, right? A lot of shoppers will be happy to see more goods on the shelves. But we have to ask a few questions. Government says that this is temporary. But how temporary is it? It's great that our shops will not run empty, but what we need now is a long-term solution. Yes, let's fill up our shelves, but are we always going to be a supermarket for other countries? Let's think about that. Ziscosteel to reopen. How many times have we heard this? Here are some headlines. Zisco 1 billion deal back on track. Ziscosteel revival begins. And in 2013, Ziscosteel to reopen before December. 2015, plans to reopen Ziscosteel at an advanced stage. And then this year, Ziscosteel revival finalization set for March. It's been over a decade now since Ziscosteel shut down. This used to be one of Zimbabwe's biggest companies. In fact, at one time, this was the largest steel makers on the continent. Now, it's really just a pile of rust. But what went wrong? Here's a quick timeline. It's a bit of a long history, but we'll try to get through this real quick for you. 1942, the Rhodesian Iron and Steel Commission is established at Redcliffe. 1980, the company is renamed Zisco and now employs 5,500 people, up to 15,000 more in support industries. 1986, we're starting to see some problems. An inquiry into operations discovers mismanagement at the company. The report also says the company seriously needs refurbishment. Does anybody listen? No. 93, even bigger problems. Zisco's blast furnace number 4, which produces 70% of the company's steel, breaks down. To make it worse, there's ESAP, Now, ESAP makes it cheaper to import finished steel products than to buy raw materials from Zisco. So the company starts laying off workers. And in 2005, Zisco sells some of its businesses outside the country. There's an audit, and it's discovered that the money from the sale has gone missing. Albert Mpofu was industry minister at the time. They give him the audit report. He tells Parliament this: "The report contains names of my colleagues in the ministry, MPs and employees at Zisco." But you know the story. Nobody ever took responsibility. Then in 2010, a company called ESA Africa strikes a deal to take over the company. But the deal then breaks down. Now we're told another Chinese company wants to take over. The problem? Zisco has debts of about 500 million. Nobody's buying a company that owes that kind of money. So what does the government do? They say, okay, we will take over the debt. So now, it's the taxpayer that must pay for everything that went wrong at Zisco. Also, with Donald Trump's new tariffs on Chinese steel, who's going to buy Zimbabwe's expensive steel? Because Zisco went bust, we're now spending up to $400 million on steel imports every year. Imagine if we were keeping that kind of money here at home. What a big difference would it make right now? It's so bad that at one time, Zisco was making more money by pulling down parts of the factory and selling it as scrap metal. That's how bad things got. Well, that's the story of Zisco. Why are we telling this story? Because it's basically the story of all of our state companies. A company with so much potential, destroyed by bad policy and corruption. In the end, becoming a burden on you and me as taxpayers. They are costing you and me money. It's great to see that the finance minister, Mthuli Ncube, has given state companies 6 months to privatize. We'll be back here in 6 months' time to demand progress from him. We're over the time for headlines that give us false hope. It's time for some solid action. We cannot repeat the old mistakes because, in the end, it's always going to be the small guy who has to pick up the bill.